Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You couldn't ask more than what we have in the sports world right now. Winner-take-all Game 7 tonight at Dodger Stadium. Incredibly, the first ever winner-take-all in a World Series to be played in that ballpark. It's the third oldest park in the majors behind Fenway and Wrigley, and it's never hosted a Game 7 of the World Series. Well, it will tonight, and of course, it's all decks on hand tonight. We expect to see Kershaw. We expect to see Keuchel. We'll see what happens. We got the college football playoff rankings, and we have Will Cain in our studio to talk about it all. Good morning, Cain.
Good morning, fellas.
Oh, did you want me to jump?
Well, I was just turning to you.
I'm just waiting.
I thought you could greet him as well.
I'm waiting again for all those people. We know it's all hands on deck.
Oh, yeah.
We know it. Bob Picozzi,
It's all decks on hand, as you know, in a Game 7.
Sure.
Right.
He did that years ago. Now, he made the mistake. He didn't do that on purpose. He made the mistake.
It was 2001,
yeah.
And it was the Yankees and the Diamondbacks, and they're going to a Game 7, and we're talking about it, and Bob just misspoke, and he mixed up the words deck and hands, and he wound up with all decks on hand, and we liked it so much that anytime we ever had a decisive game, we always referred to it as an all deck on hands
all
game.
deck on hand. So stop the Twitter. Don't send anything. We know we're doing it on purpose for that reason, so just wanted to get that.
What is your big picture take right now in the World Series, Will Cain?
Redemption game.
For?
Well, mainly for the Dodgers pitchers. My friend on First Take, Max Kellerman, constantly uses this phrase, revert to the mean, right? And baseball is the constant or the perfect revert to the mean sport. You play enough games, you have enough at-bats, and you ought to over time become what you are. You'll have highs, you'll have lows, but over the long haul, you'll be what you are. And I think Yu Darvish and Clayton Kershaw have shown us what their mean is, what they are. And, the kind of performances Clayton Kershaw has put up in the playoffs, I don't believe is who he is. I don't believe he's incapable of clutch performances. I don't think he folds in the playoffs, even though we have ample evidence at this point that seems to be something afflicting him. And similarly with Yu Darvish, he's been great, not only with his years with the Rangers, but in his time with the Dodgers over the last several months. He's been incredible. So they both underperformed in their last World Series performance. I think tonight they both have a chance for redemption.
Yeah, and that's the odd thing about this sport is you never get to see that starting pitcher get redemption until a situation like this, where all of a sudden it's not the norm anymore. It's not the pitcher will go however many innings and the bullpen takes care of the rest. It's when is Clayton Kershaw coming in the game? When is Dallas Keuchel coming out of the bullpen? That's the beauty of this. It's so abnormal to what a regular season, even early in the postseason, is.
Well, strategically, it's also an interesting question. At what point in the game is Kershaw the first option out of the bullpen, and when does that cease? Which is to say, if Darvish is in trouble in the third, I think he's going to Kershaw.
Absolutely.
If Darvish takes you into the sixth or the seventh, then you can be in your regular rotation of relievers.
And
you won't guy is assigned an inning, you stay with that, right?
And you probably don't see Kershaw.
You don't see Kershaw at all, unless you wind up in extra innings or something like that. What can we get from Jansen tonight? And I'm looking at Hembo as well as anybody else. He got 6 outs last night. What can we realistically expect out of Kenley Jansen tonight?
Listen, that I don't know, but we know when that bullpen doesn't have a day of rest, they're not as good as when they do.
And remember last year, Aroldis Chapman was on fumes in Game 7 last year, and he almost gave he gave the lead back in Game 7. They wound up winning the game. The Cubs wound up winning that game in extra innings, but he did not. He was unable to close the door for them.
Jensen comes in tonight in the same situation. Protecting it's tied, protecting I guess a one-run lead. You Dodgers fan, you feeling confident?
Not for 2 innings. You know, it's the last game of the season. You give Jensen a chance to prove that he is who he has always been. But you don't put him out there for 2 innings. You've got Kershaw's arm sitting there. You only need to ask Jensen for 1. And
it's like an all-star game. Go out there and throw 1 inning. Throw 1 inning. Each you throw an inning.
Yes.
The Dodgers, by the way, have never won a winner-take-all World Series game. They're 0-2 all time at home in World Series winner-take-all games, and I'm just assuming both of those go back to Brooklyn because we had the stat earlier this morning that they've never had one at Dodger Stadium.
Right.
So
by the way, and you
to the
factor
50s.
in all this redemption, and it's easy to root for Clayton Kershaw because, I don't know if I think we all like this. We root for players to be who they are or to rise above that. We never want to see somebody shrink from actually who they are at their best. So you root for Kershaw, you root for Darvish, but I don't bet against the Houston Astros at this point. I mean, there's no analytic, there's no deep analysis to explain. I think that team's just scrappy, and maybe I just have come to see Jose Altuve as the embodiment of the team. But when they need a hit, when they need a home run, they seem to get it. And in a Game 7, I just don't bet against the Astros.
Well, that's where to look. Altuve and Correa. I mean, those two when the losses, they don't hit. They're hitting 070. In the losses, and 435 or 485 something.
They have no RBIs
None.
in their 6 losses and 17 RBIs in their 7 wins.
So let's see how they're hitting tonight.
In the last 2 series. Will Cain is here. Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. This time tomorrow we'll be talking with Stu Gatz. Right now we're talking with Will Cain. College football playoff, the first rankings last night. These are great fun. How significant they are, that's in the eye of the beholder. I think there were a few things last night that were reasonably significant, but either way, it's all enormous fun to talk about. What was your big picture first and foremost takeaway?
First of all, I'm glad Georgia's number one. I think Georgia deserves to be number one. I am someone that believes in the resume. I think if you've proven it on the field up to the moment in time that we are discussing it, then you deserve to be rewarded for that. And Georgia, with their wins over Mississippi State, which was a blowout win, and the very, very impressive win over Notre Dame, deserves to be number one over Alabama, who really doesn't have an impressive victory on their resume. I mean, Florida State was going to be that, but hasn't turned out to be that. So I don't.
A lot had to do with the quarterback getting hurt. He wasn't hurt in that first game.
That's true.
Right.
So I don't care if Vegas says Alabama is a 10-point favorite over Georgia on a neutral field right now. I think that we've seen what we've seen on the field, and Georgia deserves to be rewarded for that. Similarly, I'm really glad that Oklahoma is over Ohio State because of the head-to-head matchup. I heard you guys earlier this morning. The truth of the matter is, although it's a close call, I think Oklahoma should be above Clemson. I think that win over Ohio State, I don't care how early in the season it's been or it was, you have to reward that. And if we don't reward that because it was too early in the season, then we have to be consistent. Then Wisconsin needs to be higher because we're punishing Wisconsin for not having that impressive win. We're punishing Wisconsin for not playing an impressive non-conference schedule. Don't we on the other side of that equation have to reward Oklahoma for doing so?
The one thing I'll stop you on Wisconsin. Yes, I agree what you're saying, and I don't think that we should separate, and Golick, you and Mikey made a pretty good case this morning for how college is just different from the pros, so it makes sense to do it. But I do believe in looking at the totality of a team's resume, and if we're going to make such a big deal about these games that are being played in September, we can't now pretend they don't matter. So I totally agree with you. The thing that is hurting Wisconsin is that their conference is split in half, and their half of the conference is hurt. If they had Michigan State even on their side, if they had Michigan on their side, they're going to play Michigan, so they will get that game. But if they had Ohio State or Penn State on their side, we wouldn't be having any conversation about their non-conference schedule. What they're hurt by is their conference schedule. The best win they're going to have at the end of the season is going to be Northwestern, maybe Michigan.
I guess what I get my feathers up about is this dismissal of Oklahoma's win over Ohio State because it was too early in the season.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Whether Wisconsin is lacking conference wins or non-conference wins, what we're saying is they're lacking impressive wins. So we have to, on the other side of that coin, say Oklahoma belongs above Ohio State and have a real debate about Clemson. Although Clemson has impressive victories, some of them are getting less impressive as the season goes on.
Let's look and see if that Oklahoma win over Ohio State, when all this is said and done at the end, comes out to be a feather in their cap to help them, like it did Ohio State last year. That's one of the things that if Ohio State didn't beat Oklahoma last year or play a team like Oklahoma, they wouldn't have been in. So I get what you're saying now, but let's wait till all the resumes are out, and then maybe that will be that one final tick for Oklahoma that says, what can separate? Oh, yeah, they beat Ohio State early in the season, because that's exactly what they did for Ohio State last year when Ohio State beat Oklahoma.
I think that's the reason that they have a better chance to get in than Ohio State does, now that they have a conference championship game and everything else. Ohio State has one great win over Penn State, but if you sit back and analyze the overall body of their season, Oklahoma's loss all of a sudden looks a lot better with Iowa State having beaten TCU and playing a little bit better. I think if all things – let's put it this way. if everything else winds up being equal and they put in Ohio State over Oklahoma, that will be so inconsistent with what they did a year ago. And I understand they don't have to do the same things. Their whole job is just to pick 4 teams. But you have to have some reasonable explanation for why you did it. If they put in Ohio State this year over Oklahoma, all other things being equal, that will be the opposite of what they did a year ago.
Yeah. That would be criminal. If they both win out and then Oklahoma racks up victories over TCU, Oklahoma State in a Big 12 championship game to add to a head-to-head win over Ohio State, there is just no way that Ohio State goes in over Oklahoma.
The scenario that we kind of, I hope it happens because that means Notre Dame is in, is if Georgia and Alabama undefeated in the SEC title game, close game, 1-point game, 3-point game, does the loser still stay in? If Notre Dame runs the table, are they in? So that means you have 3 teams in and 1 spot left for 4 power conference champions.
Yes.
And only 1 could get in. Do you think that's a scenario? And do you have any problem with 2 teams in the same conference getting into the Final Four?
I think it's a realistic scenario. I think it could be even a probable scenario, and I have no problem with it. I think Notre Dame has given you every reason, and I'm no Notre Dame fan for what it's worth. I think they have given you every reason to be rewarding them. They should absolutely be in that top 4, and that 4th spot would go to Oklahoma. Because by the virtue of the schedule, then Clemson would be out.
Right.
Well, no. We have the ACC champion. It would either be Clemson or Miami in a debate
Clemson
with
or
Oklahoma.
Miami, right?
Well, Miami would have to have lost to Notre Dame if for this scenario to be set up.
That's exactly right.
I mean, there's all these teams wind up playing each other, and that's the thing. If you look at 9 and 10, Wisconsin is ahead of Miami, but Miami, I think, has a path, and Wisconsin has a more complicated path.
Listen, Miami, I have said, if Miami beats Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Clemson in the ACC title game, they're in.
I agree.
I think they are absolutely
tough to leave out.
They push Notre Dame out. So what we're boiling this down to, in my estimation, is the Pac-12 is out and the Big Ten's in trouble.
Big Ten's in trouble, and the Big 12 with Oklahoma, they play Oklahoma State, they play TCU. Now they have a Big 12 championship game. Could put themselves in a nice position.
All right. So once again, no decisions get made as these weeks go by.
No, they don't.
But it's great fun to talk about. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, including Buster Olney from the World Series coming up shortly. Trevor Manich with more college football conversation. Will Cain is in our studio right now. What did you think of the Patriots trading away Jimmy Garoppolo?
First of all, it shows the ultimate faith that Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots have in Tom Brady. I mean, that has to be your number one takeaway. To clean out your quarterback stable, to not just trade Garoppolo, but to trade Brissett roughly a month before that, shows that no one in the Patriots organization is worried about Tom Brady approaching any sort of age-related cliff. Just not happening. Now, I can't say it's not happening. No one is worried about that. That's number one. Number two, I don't think the Patriots got enough. I think they mishandled this entire Garoppolo trade situation. They waited until the last moment. That means the leverage was not with them because they were under a time crunch. They traded him for a second, and then the news comes out within the next 24 hours that the Browns and Bengals bungled a trade, didn't get the paperwork into the NFL in time that would have sent A.J. McCarron to the Browns for a second and a third. So you're telling me that A.J. McCarron, whose contract is up the same time as Garoppolo's, they'll both be free agents next year, is worth a second and a third, whereas Garoppolo is only worth a second? The major takeaway on that has to be the Patriots did not get maximum market value for Garoppolo.
Yeah, listen, I agree with that, and the Patriot, but this was a move, and I think what Bill Belichick said is completely correct. We probably had, in my opinion, the best quarterback situation in the league for the last 2.5 years, but it's just not sustainable given the way things are set up. He's right. And I said this all along. There's no way. How are you keeping Garoppolo next year? And you're not moving on from Tom Brady. You're not franchising a backup, and he's not going to get a free agent deal that's going to be better than something else he's going to be offered. Other teams know that as well. You know, that they're not working in a vacuum here. So other teams know that situation. Other teams know he could leave in free agency. Why would we offer the moon for this guy?
There are also a million stories out there with a million different takes on this. If you read 10 different things, you'll get 10 different versions of how and why this happened. One of them, and I think it was from Albert Breer, but they all kind of get measured and mumbled up together in my head, is that they were willing to pay him, and Garoppolo wanted to go. that Garoppolo is basically saying, I'm not going to sign here even if you pay me market value because I'm not getting on the field for the next 2 or 3 years. I want to go someplace that I can play. Now, I don't know that to be true, and that's one version. I saw another story out there the other day that Belichick wasn't sold on keeping Brady, and that Kraft stepped in and said, we have to make this statement because Brady is like a son to him. Again, this is stuff I'm reading. I have no idea, and we'll probably never know. There's a dynamic in there with Kraft and Belichick and everything else, and who knows what role everyone played in it. But clearly I agree with you. The big picture takeaway is Tom Brady now gets the slate clean to try and do something that has never been done before, to be playing this sport or any sport at the absolute apex at age 41, 42, 43. He'll get that chance if he's able to do it. If you had to bet an amount of money that mattered to you, Will Cain, on how long he'll be able to take it, where's the over-under set?
3.5, 4 years.
That long.
Yes.
3.5, 4 years. He's going to be 43 years old, and he will be playing, I'm not sure how we're going to parse this, like top 10 level quarterback play in the National Football League.
Yes, I'm glad I didn't say 5, by the way. I was going to go 5, but I wanted to come back on it and still get an extra year or two, and you'd be outraged. So you are at 3.
I'm not
and
outraged,
I still
but I'm surprised.
Well, yeah, because it hasn't been done. But there's a lot of things that haven't been done that get done. There's a first time for everything. I had said this year and 2 more years, and I'll stay with that.
So that puts us roughly
3
the
more
same.
years. Yeah, but roughly the same. And now is the big coming out with the TB12, the method, and how it's going to happen. The next big thing out there to sell and do his thing on.
You sound skeptical, Gold.
Well, listen, I'm not skeptical. It works for him, but this is what we see in that industry all the time. This is the next great protein powder. This is the next great workout piece of equipment. This is the next great exercise. This is the next great workout studio. There's always going to be something, and then you just find what works for you. This is working for Tom. More power to him. It's working with him in a way that's never happened before in the NFL. So, listen, if it works for him, great. And if I'm not begrudging him anything. I'm just not at the point of saying, well, his way must be universally the greatest way ever. It's just the next thing in a long line of different ways somebody can do something, and it works great for him. So, great.
I appreciate your skepticism on how the South Beach diet turns into the all-protein diet,
the
which
cabbage
turns into
diet,
the Whole 30.
The soup diet.
I get that, and I appreciate your skepticism on that. But that being said, you should read this TB12 method article on ESPN.com by Tom Gernard and Seth Wickersham. It's interesting. I think that health, you have to say that over the last 50 years, human beings have been living longer, living healthier, and performing at a higher level later into life, not just in athletics, but in every aspect of life. And yet, at the same time, it's one of the things that we sort of adopt slowly. How can I perfect first my body and now my mind? And you come away from that article thinking, Tom Brady is dedicated in every aspect of his life to peak performance, and he's not just limiting that to what he does on the football field. We all hear about the diet. We all hear about the practice. But what you'll learn in this article is he's also focused on his mind. He's doing brain exercises that were intended for people that are either elderly or had brain impairments to try to exercise your brain into a higher level. The guys that developed the method out in Silicon Valley was like, this wasn't really intended for people who are functioning at high levels already to go the extra mile. But Tom's looking for a way to take his brain activity, his thinking process, that next step. And I think he's doing things. I don't know if the exact methods will work, but I think he's focused on things that we'll all be focused on in 10, 20 years, thinking about how can we be smarter. We're already thinking about how we can be healthier later into life. And so, Greeny, while every piece of evidence says to you quarterbacks don't play beyond 40, 41 at high levels, I think if there's someone to do it, this is the guy, because he's dedicated every aspect of his life to doing that.
And it's also the perfect storm. He's a pocket passer who will go down, who will throw the ball away. He won't try and make it. That comes into play as well. His style of play, no running quarterback would be in this position or will ever be in this position, a guy that runs more. So it all lined up for him. But all you can do is tip your cap to him. Yeah. Because of what he's done, going down as the greatest ever, and then finding a way to stay healthy and have his body and mind right to play this late
I get irritated. We give Aaron Rodgers so much credit for the arm talent that he was born with. And we look at these guys who have these natural gifts that we look at and marvel and go, I could never be that. And Tom Brady's gift, clearly, and it's not a gift because he created it, is his discipline, is his dedication, which you have to say. Every professional athlete to some extent is dedicated to being great, but there are levels to this, as Stephen A. Smith said. And the level of his dedication right now appears to be unmatched, and that in and of itself needs to get the same applause that Rodgers' arm strength does. It should.
It's just not as spectacular to watch.
Right.
It's not as much fun to watch as
Just
it is
watch it for
watching
longer.
Rodgers scrambling to his right and then flinging a dime
It's
30
exactly
yards up
right.
the sideline.
The two players that live off their mind and discipline over and over has been Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And injuries caught up with Peyton Manning, and that's been the one thing with Tom. He only had the one injury outside of the normal, nicks and wear and tear. But those are the two that really you see that game from the neck.
For all the talk of the cliff, it's worth pointing out Tom Brady's on the field and Aaron Rodgers is injured right now.
That's exactly right.
All right, before we let you go, and we got Buster coming up from the World Series in a minute, we got into a debate, I think it was last week with you, about quarterback classes and all this kind of stuff, which year's quarterbacks were better. Right now, Deshaun Watson versus any of the guys we were talking about, Dak, Mariota, Winston, Wentz, and Goff. If I told you could have Watson ahead of all of them, would you take him ahead of any of them? You're starting a team.
No.
Who are you taking?
I put him third. I take Dak, Wentz, and then Deshaun.
Oh, you're such a Cowboys fan.
It's not
It's
true.
ridiculous. You're taking Dak ahead of him right now based upon what you've seen?
Sample size. Dak went 13-3 with the third highest QBR in his rookie season, and he's already
the best
what is
running
it, second
game we've
highest
ever seen. Like they were running the ball like it was 1974 in Dallas
amazing
last
how
year.
much success you discredit success. That's just
I'm
amazing.
discrediting nothing. Deshaun's
Deshaun's amazing. He's amazing. That doesn't mean I have to start the team with him over Wentz and Dak right now. 7 games? 7?
Yeah. I
7.
mean, at one point last year, Wentz had only played 7 games.
You're such a...
And Dak had played 7 games.
I may be a homer, but you are a sucker for flashy things. Big throws by Rodgers and 7 games by Watson.
Golick, which one you doing? You had.
Oh no, I'm just having
like a tennis
fun
match.
to you
I understand
guys.
that. Who's right?
I would take probably Wentz, Dak, and then Deshaun.
Oh, look at that.
You're both out of your mind. No one is better than Buster Olney, who wakes up at 5:30 in the morning Los Angeles time to go downstairs to the lobby of his hotel in Los Angeles because he does not want to disturb the guests who are occupying the rooms nearby, because he'll be talking loudly with us on the phone. And he joins us now here live as we look ahead to tonight's Game 7. Now, when we had you on the other day, Buster, someone was giving you a hard time down there in the lobby. Is everything clear? Is the coast clear for you right now?
Yeah, everything is clear. When I sat down about 20 minutes ago, the same security person came through and said, "Hey, sorry about that. I realized that you were on the phone." And I said, "No, it was more than just me being on the phone. You were on national live radio." And I said, "You ever see the show Mike and Mike?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, that's better than First Take." So take that.
How about that?
I like that.
Oh, you got to like that.
Wow, that's a great opinion, and the show's ending.
There's but for 2 more weeks, this guy's going to love us.
There you go.
All right, that said, let's get to the action here. Buster, a million questions. We can keep looking backwards, but I think it's more important that we look forward. What can we expect from Kenley Jansen tonight?
Well, it doesn't really matter what we can expect. The fact is that Dave Roberts is going to line him up to get as many as 6 outs tonight. It's pretty clear that the Dodgers have their plan with their bullpen, and they're sticking to it. Despite the numbers that we've seen in this series, when the Dodgers bullpen has rest, and they have in this series in games 1, 3, and 6, as Paul Embikides told us, no earned runs in like 12 1/3 innings. And when they're not rested, he's still going to go to them. And they've gotten pounded, 9 homers in 15 1/3 innings, 14 runs. He's going to use tonight Brandon Morrow. He's going to use Kenta Maeda. He's going to use Kenley Jansen. And he's probably going to use Clayton Kershaw. Dave told us before the game yesterday, Kershaw texted him yesterday and said, "I want to pitch in Game 6. And Roberts texted back and said, "Get ready to prepare to get the last out of Game 7. And I don't think he meant that literally, but there's no question about it. Kershaw is in his plans tonight.
Okay, so that was my question. When would be the plan? Is it if Yu Darvish, God forbid for Dodgers fans, has another outing like he did last time, you wouldn't see Kershaw early to try and keep kind of that starter mentality early before going to the bullpen?
Because Alex Wood has experience coming out of the bullpen, my guess is that going into tonight, the first guy out of that pen is going to be Alex Wood. And let me tell you, Yu Darvish had a reputation among his teammates in Texas as being somebody who puts a lot of pressure on himself. Some people go out there with a heart rate at 60. Darvish is more like 200. We saw it in the last start he made. He couldn't command anything. He couldn't command his slider. and he was awful. And I suspect, given all that's at stake tonight, that the game starts with Rick Honeycutt, the pitching coach of the Dodgers, probably will have his hand on the phone. And if they see Darvish and get a sense in Darvish's warm-ups that he's potentially going to have one of those games, man, they will move quickly. And I think Wood will be the first guy. My sense is probably, depending on where they are in the Astros lineup, Morrow could be in there, but Kershaw will be among the 5 options out of the bullpen after Darvish.
Mike Buster Olney again live in L.A. tonight. Game 7 of the World Series. It's the first ever winner-take-all Game 7 of the World Series to be played at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers have only played in 2 of them in their history, both on the road, and they're 0-2 in those, and both of those came when they were playing for Brooklyn. So give us a sense. Altuve, Correa, in the 6 games that the Astros have lost in this series and the previous one, they've driven in 0 runs. Almost all of those have come on the road. Why? Why the enormous difference in those guys? I understand the configuration of the ballpark in Houston is unusual, but that can't be enough. Why have these guys not been able to get it going on the road?
I wish, Greeny, I wish I could give you an answer. I can tell you this. They're both, they both seem absolutely comfortable. We went into the Astros clubhouse before yesterday's game. That was about as loose a clubhouse as you can imagine, and I still think it's going to be that way. And I talked to Correa, and he told me that, he said, I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping, but it's fine. He said, because when we lose, I sleep like a baby. When we win, I can only sleep like 3 or 4 hours because I'm just replaying the game in my head. He's waking himself up, swinging in his sleep, making throws in his sleep, that sort of thing. He's having a blast. Altuve seems to be the same way. I can't give you a good answer as to why they're not hitting on the road.
Where'd you see Verlander start to veer? I mean, he was throwing strong, and then to give up 2 runs to the 8-9-1 batters seemed to be a little odd. What did you see out of him?
I think it was the game changed when finally he was forced to pitch out of the stretch. He was so dominant early. First pitch strikes, I think, to 14 of the first 16 batters, using his fastball. But then when Austin Barnes got that hit and Verlander finally had to work out of the stretch, he lost his command. And, Chase Utley came into the game in a double switch. Guys, Chase Utley hasn't had a hit in a postseason game since the division series last year. 29 straight at-bats, and Verlander hits him with a pitch. And again, because he has to work out of the stretch with Taylor up, 97-mile-per-hour fastball, leaves that over the plate, and Taylor has been so great, sticks it the other way. I really think the fact that the Dodgers finally got him to have to work with runners on base was difference-making in that game last night.
Buster Olney is with us from L.A. Mark Teixeira said afterwards that all the momentum right now is on the Dodgers' side. I've never believed in momentum in baseball. Where do you see advantages going into tonight?
Well, I think the advantage in terms of the starting pitching, I think, is without a doubt with the Astros. Lance McCullers has pitched in big moments in this postseason, and he seems completely comfortable. I mentioned about Darvish. Guys, in his last start with the Rangers, knowing that there were a lot of scouts in the stands, and there was so much riding on that game, Darvish was getting ill early in that game behind the dugout. On the other hand, McCullers just seems so much at ease in these spots. But I think that once you get past the starting pitching, the advantage will start to veer toward the Dodgers because they have maybe better relief options. The Astros will have Dallas Keuchel. Brad Peacock has been so terrific in this series. But, of course, the back end of their bullpen, they don't even have a set closer situation. This is game 179 on the year for the Astros. They don't really have a setup man. They don't have a closer because the bullpen has been such an issue. So if the Dodgers carry a lead through the Darvish part of this game, I think the big advantage swings their way.
Buster, saw some of your tweets during the game that you thought Dave Roberts, some of his moves were surprising. Where were you going there?
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, the Dodgers have their plan, and they're sticking to it, where they're using Morrow. Brandon Morrow has a chance to pitch in it, and I'm assuming he's going to pitch in every game in this World Series. They continue to use him. They continue to use Maeda. They continue to use Kenley Jansen. And when they took Rich Hill out of that game last night, Dave Roberts was booed in Dodger Stadium because Dodger fans weren't happy about the fact that they took Hill out after 4 innings in Game 2. So you know what, Dave? The Dodgers analytics staff, they stuck to their guns. They took Hill out last night. They go to that bullpen last night. It was terrific. It all worked out for Dave last night. All those moves that I was sitting there wondering about. I can tell you, Aaron Boone and Dan Schulman, doing the game on ESPN Radio. I was sitting right next to him. They felt the same way, and it all worked out for Dave.
Golick loves Rich Hill.
Oh, I feel so bad for that guy. Just keep throwing great, dude, and they'll just yank you out of the game anyway. Man.
Yeah.
Mike, it doesn't get any better than Game 7 of the World Series. Who will reign supreme? Coverage tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app, presented by AutoZone. What do you think of that, Buster? I mean, you've been following the sport all of your life. And there seems to be very little room right now, and maybe this goes back to the crux of, I was reading the interview that Ken Rosenthal did with Joe Girardi, the now former manager of the Yankees. You know, guys sticking to their guns and not really being willing to alter the plan based upon what they're seeing play out before their eyes. Is that something that you favor or don't favor? Is that something that you think managers are somewhat forced to do so they can explain things afterwards in a way that makes sense? Why do you think that's happening?
Because the game is more and more and more is being rooted in numbers. Manager making a call based on gut instinct, that is sort of being shoved aside. That's not as much a part of the game. They're looking at players, and I say managers. It's really front offices that dictate. You know, in a lot of cases, starting lineups. They dictate bullpen scripts to the managers. They look at it like baseball, like Stratomatic cards, where it's all based on numbers. I think there are a lot of circumstances in which I think that it doesn't apply. I just haven't seen a lot of games. Rich Hill was rolling in Game 2. And he got taken out of the game despite that, and it started off a series of dominoes that really hurt the Dodgers in Games 3, 4, and 5. I personally don't like it. I know there are a lot of baseball people who don't like it. But to your point, I think because front offices want to explain what happened after a game, they stick to it, and that's what they'll do tonight as well.
All right, Buster, keep that spot in the lobby staked out for tomorrow morning. We're going to need you badly here as we look forward to Game 7 tonight. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you doing this. Get some rest.
Absolutely, and I'll say hi to your friend here.
Okay, please do. That's the dairy farmer in Buster Olney. He's up early no matter what.
Yeah,
he was on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
We always bring up the blackjack. Be consistent. I hit 16s. Dealers show 7 or higher all the time. What do? You have a 12, dealer shows a deuce. By the way, I hate when the dealer has a deuce. He might as well have a wild card. I hate it.
12 against a 2, you do not. 12 against a 2, you take a card, and you do 12 against a 2. I thought you were saying 11 against a 2.
No.
Because 11 against a 2, do you double?
I double. If I have 11, I double on everything.
Okay, yeah.
Even if the dealer has a face card, I double. If the dealer has an ace and doesn't have, obviously, the blackjack, I
12
double.
12 against a 2, you take a card.
See, I look at the table, and if one card I know is going to come out, I won't. But I'll make sure a card comes out. I want a card to come out. So if somebody else takes a card out, I'll stay. But if no card comes out, I'll hit.
Why?
I just think
that,
at least
that's not influencing the randomness of the following card, right?
That's my way of going about it.
But you recognize that is everything you've ever made fun of me for, all of my golf gods and everything else. Yeah. You're just basically saying, so long as one other card comes out of there, the next one isn't going to work.
And a lot of times it's more than one because depending on what people have, they're going to.
What if you're in the anchor chair?
And no cards come out, I'll hit.
Well, you're in the anchor chair, so you no cards coming out after you.
No, I know that. So I always want to sit in the anchor chair.
So you're talking about what has happened before you?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. If I'm in the anchor chair and a card has come out, I'll stay. If no cards come out, I'll hit. A 2 against a 12. That's just how I roll.
I'm trying to understand the logic of it.
There is none.
Okay,
there really is.
Right.
Because for the most part, you should hit that every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. But
I consistently do it different every time.
I remember the one time we sat next to each other at a blackjack table, and you were yelling at me to hurry.
I wasn't yelling at you, and I don't do that to other people. I know you. That's why I was just questioning some of your stupid moves.
The moves were fine. It was taking me a second to calculate what I had.
Oh, yeah, you can't count fast enough either.
That's what you were yelling at me about. That's what's the whole quick math thing. That's where that all came from. All right, take a short break. Back in just a moment. Mike and Mike.
Do you ever tell the dealer to slow down when you're playing blackjack?
No, I don't, because no one is in a rush except you.
I'm not in a rush.
You're yelling at me because I'm adding up what I have. I'm good at math. That little clip that we run on TV all the time with me saying I can't do simple math. I'm good at math. I was a good math student, but when I'm playing blackjack, it takes me a second. When I get to a third, sometimes a fourth card, especially if there's an ace in the middle of it, so I'm trying to decide exactly what that is constituting. It takes me a second to make sure I'm confident in what I have before I make up my decision what I want to do next. And you're yelling at me.
I'm not yelling at you.
Take a card, Greenie. Take a card, Greenie.
I'm just mocking you. I mean, you should just let me play your hand.
All right, I have a better reason. I have two reasons why you want to be rooting for Notre Dame to make it into the Final Four this year.
I don't need any, but go ahead and give me the two.
The first and most obvious is your familial connection to Notre Dame, the fact that you and your brothers played there and your sons played there and everybody basically connected to you went there. But here's another one, and this is from Jake, and I think it is a good point. If two SEC teams and Notre Dame get in, you will have 3 Power 5 conferences without a rep. How long before we get to 8 teams if that happens?
Well, see, what I don't know is the contract for this, how long when can they expand? How can they decide to expand next year if they want to? What are the limitations on that? I think it will eventually end up with 8 teams. The question will be, do they go to 6 first and then go to 8?
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry, but it sort of does impact this. Would Notre Dame count as an ACC team in that context? No. So really, you would have 4 conferences left out.
That's what I'm saying. You would have Well, no, you have 5 power.
Oh, someone else would get in. I'm sorry. There's a 4th team.
Right.
My bad.
Yeah.
So the 4th team would come from one of the conferences.
One of the 4.
Excuse
me. You'd have 3 out.
So there would be 3 out.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry. So, either way, the point was well taken.
So ESPN, we have a 12-year deal for these football playoffs. But does that mean you can't expand it? That's what I don't know.
Listen, if they came to us and said, "Hey, we can add more games," I'm guessing that's a conversation
everybody
we could
makes
have.
More money. I would think so as well. The only question to me is it's not if, it's when. And will it go to 6 teams first and then to 8 or right to 8? I think it ends at 8. And then obviously 2 lost teams I think will be involved. And this would be a big thing going toward that. 2 SECs, an independent, and then 1 more power conference, 3 left out. You'd be like, wait a minute, can we really have this?
Listen, I mean, I've been around the Big Ten since the mid-'80s, right? That's my conference. I went to school there. They are a very powerful group of people, all right? The Big Ten is a very powerful entity within the world of college sports. And I don't believe this will happen. But if an unbeaten Big Ten champion gets left out of the mix, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the conversations that take place.
Here's my thought
after that happens.
Here's my thought on that. I'm not a big knee-jerk guy when we all want to change things in sports because something happens a couple of years. For a couple of years. Uh-huh. I'm kind of let's ride it out. And I would say the same thing if it were 2 SECs, the independent, and 1 more power. I'd say this happened this year. Let's not think it's going to happen every year, okay? But the other side of me says I think that the football playoffs should expand anyway. I think that the number should be 8 anyway. So to me, it would just be if that could help get to where I think it should be anyway quicker, then great. But normally I'm not for, oh, my God, how did this happen? Let's change it right now.
If Wisconsin gets left out for Oklahoma, I'm just imagining this in my head. If Wisconsin beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, you would say, well, Oklahoma's best win is Ohio State. Well, Wisconsin also beat Ohio State.
Right.
And Oklahoma, of course, would have won a conference. Wisconsin would have won a conference. Oklahoma had the better non-conference, but their big non-conference win is Ohio State, who Wisconsin also would have beat.
You're also going to have to look at strength of schedule, and I think Wisconsin is going to lose that battle.
But that's really not their fault. They play in a conference, and they're half of the conference.
But it still has to come into play.
I understand that. I'm not telling you it would be wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying I know those guys.
Yeah.
That is.
They wouldn't take it well.
Not well. No. I mean, that would. I just would like to be part of those conversations. Yeah. I would. I'm sure
you'll be invited.
I just would like to sit and listen to those conversations. Listen, I could help. Jim Delaney, call me. I got you. Be right back.